Hi, folks. Welcome to the Sunday edition of the I Write podcast. We had Mar today, but there was no Scottish politics following it. That's on at 2:30. I think there's a statement from the government about coronavirus. Today's papers are full of criticism of the Westminster government. Few blogs as well. A guy who's recovered from coronavirus makes a very, very good point in his blog about we need to criticize the government in order to get a better standard out of them. But Stewart, you've got Wee Ginger Doug's blog today in front of you. Do you want to read out the bit that caught your eye?
I think the summary is where it sums up what we probably want to talk about. We'll wander about, I'm sure. Anywhere there's a properly functioning democracy, a government should not survive a scandal of this magnitude. Where incompetence and deceit on such an epic scale has been revealed, leading to the unnecessary deaths of tens of thousands, the Prime Minister should resign and the government should fall. But this is the UK, not a properly functioning democracy. This is a government which cannot be held to account. Scotland can only seek to escape from it.
Jimmy?
Yeah, the wee Doug's quite right, mate. The idea that this government is actually in any way doing anything useful is almost laughable. When you look at the timeline, we're not meant to look backwards, obviously, because we're encouraged by government and mainstream media to look forward and see how we're going to get out of this. But Stuart's right, 20-odd thousand people died. Many thousands of those people needn't have died had the government acted quickly enough. Boris missing 5 Cobra meetings because he's more interested in having a long weekend with his fancy piece and trying to put back his relationship with his children that he destroyed by taking up with said fancy piece. That was far more important to him than a coming pandemic. And he was told it was coming. Didn't he listen to the apologists that tell you they didn't know, the scientists didn't know? There was a professor up at Edinburgh University warning them in February. They certainly knew when they were taking decisions in early March and took 11 days doing nothing. They knew it was marching down the path. They just thought, oh, it's flu and we'll cope with it. Well, it's no flu. We haven't coped with it. And there's 20-odd thousand deaths on the hands of this government.
Okay, guys, as ever, it falls to me to be the devil's advocate on this. I'm going to speak first on one of these so that I can get my anger out.
Aye.
First of all, do we really think it's sensible for the government to resign en masse at this time?
Uh-huh.
Right. What are you going to replace the government with?
Well, there you go. They should probably have a coalition with an emergency government with the Labour Party and the SNP.
Because the Labour Party fills you with confidence.
No, that's another. I knew I was walking into my own trap there. Yes, because they're missing in action. I mean, it's appalling. They haven't been a responsible opposition since 2016. They're not responsible for the situation we're in, but they are responsible for not doing what their duty is.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I think it's ridiculous to ask a government to resign in the middle of a pandemic. I think.
Why? Who do you think is not going to be a better health minister than Matt Hancock?
And how long do you think it's going to take us? Jimmy, they didn't resign at 12 o'clock tonight and a new government sits down at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
No.
You can put anybody into position. You can appoint anybody. The Prime Minister can appoint anybody he likes. Right. Matt Hancock has been a disaster as health minister. So Michael Gove is more concerned about positioning himself to start Boris.
Well, wait a minute. We're keeping Boris Johnson then.
At the moment, I think you have to keep a Prime Minister, mate.
Because I mean, as far as I
can remove the fools that are attempting to run government.
So as far as I understand it, the only country in the world that can manage to force the resignation of a prominent player in a pandemic at this time is Scotland.
Now, don't forget, like,
Aye.
I think you're making an assumption, an unspoken assumption here, Norrie, which is that this crisis could be over soon enough for us to change the government at a safer time. This could go on for a year and a half, easy.
We're at the peak of the pandemic, if we're
Oh,
lucky.
piss off, piss off.
Wait a minute. Right? Piss off, cheeky bastard. We're at the peak of the pandemic, if we're lucky, was what I was going to say. And you are suggesting that we start moving the pieces on the chessboard. I can't see it as a sensible move.
Well, why would we stick with a completely incompetent prime minister? He didn't. Bear in mind what. Well, let's go back to what Jimmy summed up.
Let me answer the question you just asked.
He's in fact he missed 5 Cobra meetings, and we know why he missed the meetings. And while he was missing these meetings, he was telling his staff not to send him full red boxes. If you don't know what a red box is, that's the detailed information that a prime minister gets every day. He's got to go through all the papers that his assistants have chosen and sign them off. He told them just to give them minimal information. So he didn't even get the information during that period.
You don't know that the minimal information he was getting wasn't the information he needed, but that's another point. Right. All I need from you guys is to tell me who you're going to replace them with.
Well, there you go. You know who's lined up. Gove. Murdoch has said Gove should go. Should move in.
Well, is that what you're saying?
No, of course I'm not.
So what you want to do is cut the head off the snake and not replace it with another head.
Right.
I don't think cutting the head off the snake would actually work, mate. I think you'd have to remove Matt Hancock immediately because he's not capable of doing his job. He's pretty much shown that he's willing to actually lie about things like PPE, about things like testing. He's willing to lie so that he himself doesn't have to squirm and give answers that he's not capable of giving. He's not capable of telling us the truth, Norrie. He's not capable of saying, I don't have that information. I don't know. He pointed that out for a couple of weeks. So I'd remove him immediately.
Yeah. And it falls into the category of the devil you know. I mean, I think our biggest problem, as was well highlighted on Mar this morning with Gove, was the way to answer a question you don't want to answer is just to keep talking and talking and talking.
Mm-hmm. That's just standard practice for politicians in Britain now. They just won't answer what they don't want to answer.
So the problem for me doesn't actually lie with the government we've got. It lies with who's holding them to account.
Right. And so the media, it's the third leg of this problem. We've got the government, which is incompetent, probably criminally incompetent. We've got a Labour opposition, which is incompetent. And we've got a supine media.
And I'm not disagreeing with any of that. But I would like to know who you intend to replace these people with, because Hancock doesn't have a genius sitting behind him.
Could it be worse?
Well,
yes.
Perhaps Boris Johnson shouldn't have made Matt Hancock health secretary. Perhaps he should have kept the previous health secretary, who wasn't a fabulous health secretary by any manner of means, but he actually had his fingers on the pulse. He did have facts. He did answer factually questions when he was asked. But Boris got rid of him because the guy stood against him for the leadership.
So you're suggesting we replace Hancock with the man responsible for not having the pandemic plan up to speed?
Well, we had the pandemic plan up to speed, but government insisted that the pandemic plan wasn't going to be followed and didn't fund it correctly because it fell under the auspices of austerity.
Well, look, let's bring in the deeper and longer term damage that's been caused by this government. We could go back all the way to 2010 and 10 years of austerity, and that's one of the reasons that the NHS, the health service, hasn't got the preparedness that it needs or the equipment. But we've also got the question of Brexit. Now, the Sunday Times article makes it absolutely clear. If you think about the timing of this pandemic being announced at the end of January, beginning of February, all that the Johnson government were interested in was signing off and celebrating the exit from the EU.
Yeah, and they were actually planning to spend hundreds of millions of pounds at one point on having a party to celebrate Brexit.
Now, add into
And
that.
certainly over the last 18 months, every bit of contingency planning has been about a no-deal Brexit.
There you go.
When they were told, and we were told by them, that the possibility of a pandemic was their number one priority, and it's never been their number one priority. Their number one priority has been Brexit and preparing for the possibility, may I even suggest that their preferred option, which is a no-deal Brexit in December.
Well, look, the issue with Brexit, it goes deeper than that. Apparently, according to the Sunday Times article, there wasn't the staff available to even consider the possibility of handling a pandemic because they were so busy dealing with Brexit.
Do you think the whole thing for the Sunday Times is just another attempt by Murdoch to put Gove into number 10?
Well, there's been a lot of other journalists have been commenting on this article. This is headline news right across the UK. This is the big news of the day. And a lot of the journalists are saying, well, we've known this all along. Well, why didn't you say before?
Sorry, Stuart, you're wrong about that. It's not trending on YouTube or Twitter. It's wee Jeannie's Doug doing somersaults during the coronavirus lockdown.
The Doug with the false teeth. That got more hits than anything last, didn't it?
I think, right, as political beasts, putting pressure on a Tory government is kind of second nature to us. But the reality is they can't change anything now. And by the time they can, it will have been so well spun, hidden, covered in chocolate, that nothing's going to happen. The inquiry that will come out of this will take 5 years.
Aye, and it clearly will blame scientists and it will blame experts. There's no danger any inquiry in this country ever blames politicians. It just doesn't happen.
Okay, well, let me throw the dangerous bit into the argument. Violence, an uprising. People, don't forget, this is an unprecedented situation that none of us have lived through. We are watching friends and relatives die because of the incompetence of a government, not inanimate people because they starved to death, but people dying within a couple of weeks. Now, if one MP can be shot dead, Joe Cox, by one angry person, I mean, you've got to expect violence as an outcome of this.
I think you're talking abject nonsense at that point, mate. When have you ever seen an uprising with the English? Doesn't happen. Not in centuries have the English had a popular uprising against their politicians. They just don't do it.
Unless there's actual real food shortages. If people can't feed themselves.
Why do you think they've kept the supermarkets open? Why
Exactly.
do you think they've kept the trucks running, Norrie?
Exactly.
If there was a food shortage, there might be an issue, but there ain't going to be a food shortage. So,
I mean, there's no way they're manning the barricades to get rid of Boris because they like Boris.
No, mate, his approval rating's actually going up in all this nonsense.
Aye.
And he is, as I say, he's the All England hide and seek champion. Since he became leader, he's only attended about 4 sets of PMQs. God only knows how many Cobra meetings he's missed. And I'm at a loss as to how his approval rating can go up when he disappears like that. I mean, the man knows, he sees more of the inside of a fridge than he sees of the dispatch box.
Because he's not having to stand there and say 100,000 tests a day by the end of the month. Mm-hmm. He's not having to stand there and say, we've got enough equipment for 3 days coming from Turkey today. Oh, It's not arriving today.
Well, Norrie, even that thing that came out on Friday where they were saying that they downgraded and only in England, but they downgraded the amount of oxygen that has to be in your lungs or has to be in your blood for you to be safe. That was a political decision. Can I get absolute medical?
Can I get technical here?
Mm-hmm.
Aye, go on then.
I would like to see the actual ins and outs of that downgrading, because you can actually poison people with oxygen. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You can force a buildup of CO2 that poisons you. I experienced this with my mum who was on oxygen. So until I know why, it might well be the case that they discovered there was a problem with the amount of oxygen they were giving to patients.
Do
No,
you
I think
honestly believe when they're telling people that they're going to run out of gowns today, that the decision to downgrade on supply of oxygen is a medical decision rather than a political one? Because
well,
Well, Jimmy,
I think
that's kind of the point I'm making, Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
There are medical reasons you would lower
Aye, but
that number.
in the middle,
Yeah, but,
in the middle
okay.
of a pandemic, to suddenly discover that medical reason would be pretty unprecedented.
Yeah, but
Given
look,
how
I think you both are, you're not necessarily arguing about the right part of the issue about oxygen. I think the decision about guidance about oxygen is deciding at what level of, let's say you test a patient and they're down to 92% oxygen in their blood, and that's a point at which they would normally start supplying oxygen. They probably raised that to 93%. I'm not saying that they have, but that, rather than saying that the amount of oxygen they're going to get is going to be less, it's at the point at which they start supplying oxygen.
Right. Well, 92 is quite dangerous.
Well, I'm just taking you
No,
an example.
well, I mean, my mum survived quite happily on 92 because she didn't move. She just lay in bed. So, you know, there are, for different people are at different levels, and that's a clinical decision. Whether what they've done here is to issue guidelines saying, look, it's safe to take coronavirus patients down to 92. You don't have to keep them at 96.
There you go. That's what I'm saying.
Or whether it's a question of, oh, we're running out of oxygen, so we're going to alter the safe level to 92 because that 4% will mean we've still got oxygen in the tanks. I don't know enough about it, but there are medical reasons that it could have been a sensible move.
It'd be the first sensible move this government's taken in weeks.
Well, see, they're politicians. I mean, if you look at the Tory party we've got now, they are the most politicians of all politicians.
Oh no, I've got to sum the most politicians of all politicians.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll go down in history.
They are the mother of politicians. They are prepared to look at a camera and lie.
Well,
now that's Donald
that.
Trump. You know, Nigel Farage. These aren't real politicians. That's your problem. These are not what we would think of traditionally as capable people. Well, let's be honest, capable men. Because, you know, Priti Patel doesn't really inspire much confidence. So that's what these guys do. They politic. Okay, they don't run countries. They don't run treasuries. They politic.
All right. Well, let me throw another idea into the mix. If during the Harold Wilson government, the elite, the establishment through the intelligence services considered a coup against Harold Wilson on the grounds of, it wasn't exactly far left, but on the grounds of it was putting the country in danger, what about the establishment? What about the intelligence services? What about the Sir Humphreys? Are they going to get together and say, look, this is appalling what's happening?
No.
No, of course not. They are the Tory party. The Sir Humphreys and the people in the security services, regardless of how shit the Tory party are, will always support the Tory party.
Unless there's a Tory party we don't know about to replace the Tory party, no. The only people, and if you think about it, they're the ones that have done it on every occasion before, is the 22 committee.
Right. Okay. Well, look at it historically. If this is the biggest crisis this country has faced in the last 100 years, we've had two national governments. One at the 1929, the financial crash, Wall Street crash. One as a result of that, 1929, 1930, and another one at the start of World War II. Now, if this isn't a similar crisis for the country, what is?
Could I just gently point out that what you're suggesting is merging a very much controlled by, I'm trying to word this pretty carefully, a pro-Israeli lobby that finances most of the high echelon members of those two parties.
Well,
And you're suggesting we get them together and they're actually going to do something useful for our country.
well, we might as well just give up and get the guns out then.
No. We take our own country. Let England sink for all I care.
The problem here is really simple. Neither party looks capable.
Unfortunately.
Right?
And
there is no way the SNP will be sitting in a government of national unity. It just won't happen. Ian Blackford might. There's no way Sturgeon's going to go down to London and sit round that table.
Why would you, mate? We're just going to be, if we fell into that trap, every single bit of blame would be lumped on to the SNP. Can you imagine the opprobrium they would heap upon SNP when they've got the entire media and entire establishment? One wee mistake and we'd be to blame for absolutely everything. Why help them out? Take Scotland back and to hell with them. They've had their opportunity. We've just had an election. We've still got 4 years of Boris to go.
Well, the other thing about it is that the only time you'll get a government of national unity with the Tories in charge is when the mistake is so big
they can't see a way out.
They have to spread the blame.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, what they have to do is bring the whole establishment to the table so that once it's over and done with, the whole establishment can make the same argument. Wasn't our fault, nothing we could do about it, blah, blah, blah. Which, you know,
I still think we're going to get the blame, Norrie. I still think they'll say that they locked down early enough and people didn't adhere to it. They're still going to find a way to blame the people.
It's going to be hard if the stats are right.
Mm-hmm. But they'll just cook the books with the stats, mate. They're used to doing that.
The stats today on the people who agreed with lockdown, the headline was 80% of people in Scotland agree with the lockdown. Mm-hmm. What it was, the question was in 5 parts. It was totally 100% agree. Yeah, really do agree. No bothered. Don't really agree. Definitely don't agree. 1% definitely don't agree. Now, I phoned round and told them you'll be available for a pint, Jimmy, because you're one of them. So, in fact, 95% of people in Scotland basically think it's a good idea.
Well, it's worked elsewhere, hasn't it? It's definitely worked here. It's the unfortunate thing. It's calmed things down. The unfortunate thing is
I don't think England will be much
3
different.
or 4 weeks too late.
I don't think England will be much different.
I don't think we've also got the future, the danger of a second wave, a third wave, you know, and that becomes an issue again about lockdowns. Do we come out of a lockdown and go back into another lockdown?
Stuart, to be flippant a minute, we've got a Tory government. It's no going away. No, we haven't got a future.
That's the unfortunate thing, mate. We've got 4 more years of these claims.
This law will pay off the businesses, pay off the banks. They'll do all that, but austerity is with us for another 10 years.
Yeah, but okay,
they'll dress it up, call it something else, put a cherry on it, but it'll be austerity.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more people dying, more people dying, more people dying every time we have another wave. This is liable to go on for 18 months.
Yeah, but I mean, if they get it down to flu levels, people will learn to live with it.
Why would they?
Well, I mean, there's what I can't remember. It's 15,000 a year die of flu.
The way they managed it in Germany, they've already got it down to flu levels there.
Well, that's
the fact that we didn't manage it as well at the start of it. If we'd managed it the same way that Germany had, you wouldn't have 20,000 people dead in the UK. Well, I know they keep saying 15,000, but they're just not building their bloody care home figures into it yet. So say about 22, 23,000 people dead. If we'd done what Germany done, there'd be about 2,000 or 3,000. People would have found that fine.
Well, that's kind of my point, that you're talking about the future. In the future, it'll be flu. That's, it'll be coronavirus. Oh, I see old Jimmy Smith's popped his clogs with coronavirus. It'll become part of the landscape.
Well, that's like going back to the days when people got consumption. When I was a young man, young people died of consumption. and that was normal.
Well, I mean, it'll become the new normal, unless, of course, they get a vaccine. And that's the game changer. They get a vaccine, it allows the rampant capitalists, the neolibs, the Tory party to want to go back to what was happening pre-coronavirus. Because they don't want to change things. Don't kid yourself.
Oh, come on, no, of course not.
They want to keep things as they
All
are.
right, all right. What we're not asking, well, we skirted right it anyway. What do we expect to happen in the near future? Do we expect Gove to replace Johnson? I mean, if that's what Murdoch wants, Murdoch gets what Murdoch wants.
Well, he doesn't. He's been trying for long enough to get Gove into number 10 because he's totally a creature of Murdoch. And he's not managed it so far, so no, I didn't think so. At the end of the day, I think Boris, in his wee hideaway act, has bought himself enough time. Fair play, Michael Gove done a nice wee bit of backstabbing this morning on Andrew Marr, but the reality is, I'd imagine what Michael Gove done this morning is actually make himself the first casualty when Boris decides to start blaming people and culling that cabinet.
I think he is a future Tory leader. I do. He looks, God, I'm about to say this out loud. He looks the most competent of them. But the problem, you're looking in the wrong place. Murdoch's not talking to Michael Gove. Murdoch's talking to the 1922 committee. They're the people that make these decisions. They're who you watch. If they start briefing against Johnson, Johnson's on the way out. Until then, he's safe.
So are we looking like to tomorrow's press, tomorrow's papers, for the reaction to what's been exposed today in the Sunday Times? Do you think there'll be clues tomorrow?
Well, I think a few of the papers got wind of it anyway, because I can't remember who they were. Was it the Mirror and the Mail? Both had quite strong criticisms.
Yeah, even Peston's coming out and saying, told you so, told you so. They're all going back to the notes that they had early doors in March and saying, aye, we knew this was a problem. We knew this was an issue. Why didn't you push it then?
Well, I used to quite like Peston, but he's turned into a politician now.
Aye.
He changes with the wind.
And also this line that they keep coming out with, everything's good in hindsight. Well, what? So hindsight's only applicable if you're a member of the media or a politician. Then you can look back. But we've all just to carry on, push forward, get through this, and no blame any of our poor politicians who've worked so bloody hard to get us to where we are now.
Well, the great thing about hindsight is it allows you to decide whether decisions made were good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a series of bad decisions, in hindsight, these people shouldn't have been in the positions to make the wrong decisions.
And they shouldn't be in position to make another series of shit decisions.
I would love to agree with you, but from a practical point of view, it's not doable.
Well, that's the thing, mate. As I say, you're not going to remove Boris. He's got an 80-seat majority. He has enough backing from the media to absolutely be sure that Rupert Murdoch can't take him down.
Do you know, I read a Chris Deering piece in the New Statesman today. Chris Deering being Chris Deering.
You wash your eyes after it.
Well, he did. Nicola Sturgeon has to totally rethink independence because the British family has come together. As I tweeted to him, really, so they weren't together before this. You know, I mean, any excuse. But his thing about, there having to be a rethink of how the nation runs and, we need to put people before. And I'm thinking to myself, does this guy really think Tories are going to stop Torying?
Right, exactly.
What does he think's going to change? If he wants change, support independence.
Well, Norrie, he's kind of advocating support of the worst, most extreme Tory party Torying that we've seen in our lifetime. This mob are worse than Thatch.
Well, this is in the New Statesman.
Absolute coup, and this mob are worse.
Actually, there was a good quote. I wish I'd written it down from. It was that quote about from Thatcher, the one about socialism being the worst thing in the world, and somebody had added to it, except for banks and big business.
Nice.
Very
Well,
good.
if you're steering people to the New Statesman, you need to tell them they can look for the Dominic Mengele article as well, which says it's a personal one, and he talks about when he
Yeah.
managed to pick up COVID, but he says it's the same argument as the Sunday Times one essentially, but it's got a personal angle to it, and it's available free on Dominic Mengele's blog.
Right. Independence, seeing as I brought up Chris Deering. Does coronavirus strengthen or weaken the case for Scottish independence?
Strengthens.
You can't just do that.
I can.
You have to give me reasons, Stuart.
No, I don't. Well, we've
No,
already covered it.
Okay.
I'd say it strengthens it immeasurably, because yet again we've seen how bereft of reality the Tory party in London are. I know that everybody talks about the London bubble and sometimes you don't believe it, but they have no clue at how their decisions affect other parts of the country, how it looks when they're instructing companies not to send vital health equipment to Scotland or Wales. We've seen that they're only interested in looking after England, and in fact they're only interested in looking after London and the southeast up to Birmingham. The rest of us can go hang as far as that lot.
Look, Norrie's just persuaded us that there's nothing we can do about this situation because of the nature of the entire political establishment in London. That's the argument for why we need to, that's a strong argument for why we need to get our independence now.
I would agree with that.
I think the fact that we've just got 10 million pieces of PPE delivered from China direct to Glasgow, when London was holding stuff back from us, would indicate that Scotland can make deals on its own, can make deals with major countries on its own if need be. And I think it would also indicate that the realities of London rule are still exactly the same as they always are. They'll take more out of Scotland than they'll ever put back in. In our country, I mean, seriously, they've been doing it for 3 centuries. How long are we going to allow them to actually rip our people and resources out of our country and give us a wee bit back?
I think the way Sturgeon has acted, you kind of have to be careful with this one, because she's one politician. And I think she will, when history looks back, be the politician of a generation in the UK. But the way she's reacted, her and Jean Freeman, Deering also made the point of how good having 2 scientists on either side of you made you look at a podium. I think he was talking about Matt Hancock. I'm sorry, I think that the experts in Scotland have done a far better job. I mean, they've admitted to being wrong. Jason Leach apologized for being wrong because he didn't have all the information. One of them's resigned because she didn't obey her own rules. We're looking much more like a disciplined polity.
I think as well, Norrie, what we have up here is experts who are appointed because they're experts. What you've seen in London, particularly the likes of Whitty, he's more of a politician than anything else.
It certainly seems he's been persuaded to follow the government line. Although I suppose, I mean, you're going to get disagreements between experts, and you've got to show a united front on a decision made. Look, you know,
you got to realize, if you think any ordinary businessman that becomes top of let's say, talk about the National Farmers Union of Scotland, and the guy that ends up being the chair, he's going to be a politician of sorts anyway.
Actually, the woman who's chair of the Farmers Union is pretty good. She's a straight talker.
Well, the one in Scotland, I'm talking about there's a man in Scotland, so I don't know about the one.
Well, she must be the British What's it called again?
National Farmers Union.
National Farmers Union. She's very good. She doesn't pull her punches. I was well impressed with her when she gave an interview.
Well, you get people like the BMA spokesperson and well, actually, we don't see enough of these people on the TV. I tell you, here's something that really gets my goat. It really gets my goat. I switch on the telly to find out what's really happening with this bloody this crisis in the country, and all I get is told what to do in England, and it doesn't. A lot of it doesn't apply in Scotland. I mean, we are actually shortchanged.
You mean the coverage in
It's
Scotland?
not, and I'm not making a political issue. I'm saying we are shortchanged. We don't have 2 or 3 channels of TV, one that's going all day and giving us the information we need.
What's new?
Stewart, you can't be trusted with telecoms. You're Scottish. You can't be trusted with it. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Trying to divide the union. Shouldn't be allowed.
Norrie, change the subject a wee bit, mate. I heard the day that £1 billion has been taken up of the government's 330 billion that they were putting out for help for businesses.
Less than 1%.
Aye, about 1/4% actually been taken. It's frightening. And a lot of these businesses are going to go to the wall in the next couple of weeks when they have to meet payroll and stuff like that. And when in the bank to do so. When
it comes out in the wash, there'll be 2 problems. One is that the government wouldn't cover 100%. They would only cover 80%, which meant the banks treated it like a normal bank loan because God forbid that the banks take a hit.
Exactly.
And they started off by offering their own products, not the government scheme. So not you were being asked to save your business by taking out a loan, but it was going to cost you your house, your car, and your firstborn.
Aye, I've read countless reports of people saying that the banks were wanting that. You know, they were wanting surety of a house, and you can't trust the banks. You can't trust the banks with that surety because the last time they were in trouble, they screwed over hundreds of thousands of small businesses in this country.
Yeah. Illegally.
Christ, RBS got fined a massive amount for doing that. That doesn't help the people who lost their businesses and lost their homes because RBS were being sharks in 2008, 2010.
Banks is going to bank.
Yeah, they really did spell that wrongly in the first place when people came up with the term, right?
Well, it'll be interesting because they had the opportunity to do it differently this time.
Aye.
I hope you're listening, Chris Deering.
And they chose not to.
And they chose not to.
Fair play to them, Norrie. At least with Rishi Sunak, that shiny chancellor, he did dress it up kind of differently, and the dressing up's really only fell away. It only took about 6 hours or so before people started really questioning what they were all about.
Well, the other interesting thing is, I think I mentioned it the other day, is if you're going to give your people redundancy notices, I think it's got to be done. I think it's the 22nd. I might be wrong about that. In relation to the furlough money. So I've been warning people I know who are on furlough not to get upset if they see a letter. Although did he not announce that he was going to extend it by 6 weeks?
Yeah, I think it's extended to the end of June or something now, isn't it?
Yeah, so that might have staved that one off, but it was in fact, no, it was Friday, I think. Because it got announced the day that the letters would have had to be sent out. Stuart, anything to finish with?
No, I'm nothing funny at all today. It's sunny out there, and I'm sure there'll be hundreds of people heading down to the seaside right beside me.
Stuart, I have to tell you, you've been hilarious. This idea that a Tory government would resign was the funniest thing I've heard all day.
Fair enough.
Jimmy?
Not really, mate. I woke up this morning, took a look at the press and what have you, and then I had a look at timelines, and I'll tell you what, some of the commentators, some people coming out to defend the Tories, regardless how bad they were. And I came up with a new word for them, mate, because they were being blowhards and bobbags at the same time. So now I'm sick and tired blow bags on my timeline.
Blow bags.
Good one there, Jimmy.
Well,
Blow bags.
what I found interesting about it was the time lag. This, what was it, 11 to 21 days, I think, was quoted.
Mm-hmm.
If it turns out it was 11 days, that's the 11 to 14 days Scotland got that England didn't.
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, you've lost me.
The delay in going into lockdown.
Oh, the lockdown delay.
Yeah.
Apparently, they were 35 days late in actually starting their emergency measures.
Oh, and on behalf of all Scottish people, I'd like to thank China for flying in, what is it, 10 million
10 million
masks.
pieces of PPE. Aye.
Oh, it's masks, 10 million masks plus other stuff.
Right.
So
superb.
Thanks to all our Chinese pals that are looking after us there.
Absolutely.
Right, folks. Thanks very much, Stuart Lockhead and Jimmy Hutton. We'll no doubt see you tomorrow, folks. Thanks for listening and watching. Cheers for now.